Here, I didn't believe he was going to get through 111 slides, but you all are the witnesses. It happens. I remind you, his parents are here, so if you want to ask about what he was like as a child, that's fair game. But anything you ask, I'm going to ask Troy to repeat it so that folks on Zoom can hear it. So I hope we get lots of questions and discussion, but he's going to have to also sort of state your question back to you just so that we have everyone involved. And if those of you online have anything that you'd like to type into the chat, I will ask that question for you. So yeah, let's go straight into a Q&A if we can. Does anybody have a question?
Yes, sir.
Have you done anything at your laundromats for reclaimed water?
Have we done anything at our laundromats for reclaimed water? No, I don't think we have. Thank you for the suggestion.
We tried that here in Ely and was told we couldn't do it.
Okay. I don't know about this.
Yeah, well, it's mandatory in laundromats out west.
Oh, okay. Mandatory in laundromats out west.
Yeah, where they're
Yeah.
short of water.
Excellent. I will check that out.
Yeah, it saves 2/3 of the water.
That's not too bad.
Yeah.
Thank you. I love those ideas. I love that. Gentleman in the back.
Yeah, I'm wondering at the initial startup of this effort, what steps you took to involve the city and get the city on board with your plans and projects.
Right. So how did we involve the city as we started moving forward? And so the engagement with the city was the primary objective from the very beginning. So having meetings with the city manager, the mayor, the city council, students going in front of the city council, talking about things that they were interested in, finding a shared project, maybe something like a movie event where we would have the city manager come and talk before the movie and say, here's things that the city is thinking about. So that relationship building piece is, like I said, is actual work. It took time, and so that's kind of where we began. If there's more to say about that, but really intentional relationship building, strategic relationship building throughout all of this, and then finding small projects where we thought we could work together. And so for us, the LED lighting project was something the city manager said, that seems like a good idea. LED lighting, that sounds like energy efficiency. We said that it was one of our pillars. Do you think we should do energy efficiency? Yeah, you said it. Like, let's work on energy efficiency. LED lighting. Yeah.
Is there a board within the city or a committee that oversees those efforts?
Yeah, so is there a board that oversees those efforts? The Morris has the form of government, which is, I don't know the technical name, but it has a strong city manager, and then it has a mayor and city council. So the city manager has a lot of power in Morris, and so, but the city council obviously has to approve things. So the goal was to court all three of those. I mean, court the city council, court the city manager, court the mayor. Yeah. So, just, yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Morris is, I just looked it up, 5,015 people.
Right.
Ely is a bit smaller than that. On a global scale, they're significantly insignificant. How does your plan scale up from 5,000 to 50 to 500,000 to 5 million?
Right. Wonderful question. So this question about how does the work happening in rural small towns scale? How does the work happening in any town scale? And so that is a fun question that we should explore for an hour itself. I guess what I would say is a couple points. One is that I think there's a lot of acknowledgement that so democracy is having some challenges across the world, United States. I think there's some acknowledgement that cities are locuses. I'm sorry, Mom. But I think in the spirit, I love bumper sticker wisdom. It's kind of like any good idea. When you hear it's a good idea, it's like you think it's obvious, but it's not obvious. That's why it's a good idea. And so working from the local to the global truly is true. So I think if all of us tried to expand clean energy in our communities where we could, there would be a lot of benefits. If all of us tried to actually improve our zero waste at our communities, that really would be good. If all of us tried to engage with our schools to make sure that, so I have to brag for just a small moment. My wife, although she's a chemistry professor at Morris, she worked with the state of Minnesota on the reworking of the state of Minnesota science standards, which included incorporating climate change into the curriculum on her sabbatical. And so things have changed in the school curriculum. So again, doors have been opened now to having more conversation in the school too about climate and climate solutions. And so I think at every level, right, the development goals reflect to us how we can create a more flourishing community. And so I think, of course, waiting for someone else to solve the problem is not what we can do. But at the same time, it would be naive to say that this work isn't a systems challenge. And so it is a sandwich. We have to do the work at the community level, and policy needs to change and create that sandwich. And what I can tell you is in the enviro space, the kind of sustainability space, it's never been more exciting. So I think I visited with some of you prior to this about some of the challenges and eco-anxiety, eco-grief. With the Inflation Reduction Act, the bipartisan infrastructure law, the US passed the largest piece of climate legislation of any industrialized nation ever in the history of the world. I don't think people know this. So like we also need to talk to our friends and neighbors about when policy has done something, right? And so I am, and then maybe the last thing I would say is this, because I love the question, is our futures are interdependent and within states. So part of the topic of this conversation is, what can rural or small cities do to contribute to the larger whole? And what I know is what happens in rural Minnesota will largely influence the health of the state of Minnesota, because that's where the wind is, for example. I abut the Saudi Arabia of wind, the Dakotas, right? And policy is challenging. So my Dakotan friends, they're not exactly sure what future they're thinking about. That's democracy, right? They're thinking about what they want for their kids and grandkids. But I think Minnesotans are deciding on a different direction. At least it seems like right now we are. Yes?
I would like to thank Mr. Bruce and Mrs. Linda for bringing to this earth such an incredible force of energy which you are, Roy, and getting to know you in such a short time, and your dedication and your passion is in you, and you engraving into some as well. It's amazing, and most importantly, I have to say it's an honor to have you being the voice of a Minnesota person, and also from this type of woods, especially in such a delicate subject like this is, because we need to heal, and the healing begins at home. And I think that with all the situations that we have had in the past, from the miners and the environmental thing, it is something that we need to put in consideration to reach out for these people. They don't understand or they feel displaced for generations already.
Yes.
And so it is an awareness that we have to come into a reality and to make that dream come true so we can move forward. And like they say, we have to stop being the one I was to become the one that I want to be.
Right.
And talking about energy,
Yeah.
we are 80% of our bodies, or 60% of our bodies are water.
Mm.
And we come for energy from the universe, which is infinite,
Mhm.
and we come into the galaxies. And one of the galaxies has many stars, and one of the stars is the planet Earth where we live.
Right.
So let's put things in perspective. We are the spirits having a human experience, and so how we are behaving is the new challenge.
Thank you.
And thank you for being here
Oh,
with us.
So first of all, thank you for the kind words, Mauricio, and also thank you for the comment and emphasis on healing, right? And the humility and this question about how do we bring people together, how do we engage in civil conversations. This is a challenge that we're all facing, and so we're looking to models and humans who inspire us to be our best selves. Please.
I apologize. I have problems with time and reality.
Okay.
I thought this started.
No problem. No problem.
And I apologize if you've covered it before, but when I was going through the Morris government, I noticed that there's well, you mentioned the council and the mayor and stuff. There is a committee. I can't remember if they're appointed or not, but they serve 4 years. I don't know if that's a limited term or not. But here in Ely, we have I don't know, a dozen or so different commissions where they can serve up to 9 years each. And, all these different commissions to go through, it seems like, and of course it's simpler, and I'm not assuming you studied Ely.
Yeah. No, I appreciate, so I think the question about, or the comment question about the different city structures and how they're organized and the different planning that goes on. One thing that your question prompts me to say, which I didn't, which is, and this I think is kind of crazy. So, because what I hope you saw was, going back a decade, this Morris model work's been going on, but we meet every week or two, a group of people, either online or in person, and visit, which is crazy. That's been going on for we get together on a Thursday afternoon, and we'll sit in the room, and it's like, how's that project going? Not that good. And then it becomes a joke at some point. You're like, how's that project going? Not that good still. Keep asking about it. And again, part of that is the relationship piece I mentioned, right? Is building trust with each other, and then things come out of that. And so building those muscles of just being together, right? And then it takes work to keep that continuity going. And then as new leaders come in, this is a big challenge, which we also could talk at length about, is what happens when new leaders come on board? How do we try to bring new leaders on board who share the vision? How do we inculcate new leaders? How do we make them feel welcome? How do we help them get some wins early and celebrate it? And so Morris does have a planning commission. They do some important work, but I think in terms of the Morris, and so I think your question inspires me to also ask, Troy, why have you not engaged more? And I say, Troy, what I mean really is our team, why have we maybe not engaged more with our planning commission? This is something I will take back, and I will ask, why have we not engaged more with our planning commission? I do not know the answer. And so we've got a tree board, but I think there's just more work to do. And one of our goals right now is to widen the circle. So we know, so the goal is to not be insular, to grow our core group, but also there are probably 80 or so people on our email list who are connected to city government and county government and the schools who we feel are part of the Morris model circle. So you saw the pictures of some of the events, when we had a bunch of people in the room. But the nice thing is when we no, it's gonna be
It's 111 slides, everybody.
But when we ask, I know, it's crazy, right? But when we ask people to show up and come to the room, when we ask people to show up and fill a room, we'll get 80 to 100 people show up, but then we've got to stay engaged with them. So thank you for the challenge question. And yes.
So how many full-time employees are actually paid to work on it now through the city and school and so forth? And how many when you started?
Yes. So a lot of progress was made without any paid staff, meaning we just got together and wrote grants to a lot of these groups I mentioned, to CERTS, to the Regional Sustainable Development Partnerships, also part of the U of M, to the West Central Initiative, to anyone who would give us money, we would ask for some and say, please. But it's been relatively recently we've had a coordinator. So that most of our life we did not have a coordinator, and more recently we have. I mean, the macro level, wouldn't it be wonderful if many of our communities could have a human being, young, old, anything, but it is really fun to have some young folks come and let's do it. And so to launch new environmental professionals' careers, to gain from intergenerational wisdom, it'd be awesome if there was more funding to support things like this. Anyway, so what I appreciate about your question is what I want to encourage all of you is you don't have to have a full-time coordinator or a part-time coordinator to get going, right? And I think a lot of that work in the beginning was relational. Like we could have a community event and have the beginning of the event talking about something that we think is important, but all along this path has also been really trying to strategically cultivate leaders in our community. So there's a tension in community development, and this is again a longer conversation too, is do you cultivate the citizenry? Do you cultivate leadership, which is part of the citizenry? Yes, you should do all of that. But one thing, the approach we've really taken is to really try to develop relationships with people who are in positions of leadership. And that's taken a long time, and it's very complicated. And we still have a lot of work to do. So, yeah, thank you.
We have a Zoom question. Andrea says, does your website have examples of how much money, net of costs, that Morris has saved on some of the initiatives you're engaged in?
Yeah, so does the website have some financial information about costs we've saved? No. I have a homework assignment I will bring this back to, I want to visit with more with Griffin about, that's a wonderful idea. So the report that Griffin and our German intern wrote about solar across the city has some information about savings in that. But I think across the board, no. But this is a great idea of how do we, I should also say that most of the things we did when they went before the city council, if they didn't seem to have a break-even kind of payback, that was less interesting. I mean, culture is king in our area. Maybe it's true here, but certainly where I live, a lot of the conversation really does have to start around money. You know, but the goal isn't to end there. The goal is to become more aspirational too.
About 15 years ago, I visited a dairy farm that was capturing the waste and generating about they saved $2,000 a month on their electric bill as a pilot plan with a small dairy. You had mentioned that you have some of the largest dairies. Are they doing anything for generating their own electricity with their waste?
Yeah, so great question. So question about, we've got some large dairies in and around Morris. Are they generating electricity with the biogas? What are they doing exactly? The short answer is some of the largest dairies, one in particular, early on did take biogas and make electricity. But I think so I'm going to speak on behalf of, I'm not a representative of this business, but I think what they would say is that that wasn't the business they wanted to be in. So they mothballed the biogas, the anaerobic digestion facility, but then when an outside investor came in and said, you've got the anaerobic digestion system, we would love to take your gas, upgrade it, and stick it in the pipeline. And again, this is where it's just really interesting the way the world is, right? Because so again, amongst friends here, right? So clearly in this presentation I emphasized we're trying to use language that unites and doesn't divide, right? This is hard. And so there are a lot of people who do not think climate change is a real thing happening or induced. So how do we still make progress? And but if you look at the way this financing works for a renewable natural gas plant to come into town and create investment and jobs, it's because Californians put renewable energy, basically they attribute value to renewable natural gas, and the federal government does. So between renewable energy credits by Californians who want renewable natural gas and the federal government, those credits go together to create a financial model that makes it work.
Another way to look at a model, the country of Canada has a single payer for medical, the government.
Mm.
So the government being a single payer mandated no more burning coal.
Yeah,
So because they could equate their savings in medical bills
yeah,
and not an energy bill.
yeah.
And I got one other thought to share with her, and this idea of, and I'm all about what you guys are doing. I've been to Moore's 100 times,
Thank you.
easily.
Thanks for coming to see us. Let me know when you're in town next time.
I will.
Okay.
But you said your library had geothermal energy,
Yep.
and I would suggest you have ground source heat pumps,
Yes.
because there is no geothermal energy in the state of Minnesota.
Absolutely.
Thank
It's,
you.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. This is correct.
Right.
So-
Geothermal energy starts at 120 degrees.
Yeah. This is a ground source heat pump.
So
Yeah.
if I would ask that we present that
Yeah.
to keep what we talk about on the up and up, and we're not pulling the wool over anybody's
Yeah.
eyes.
Yeah. I appreciate the correction. Use the right language.
Thank you.
That's right. Thank you, sir. And also, you said something before that too about about Canada and
Yeah.
and coal. Oh yeah. And also interesting in Minnesota, right? Because just in terms of progress in the moment we're passing through, we're seeing our utilities shutting down their coal plants. So in Otter Tail, my investor-owned utility is shutting down coal. We saw one of the largest coal-fired power plants in Excel's territory, Sherco, shut down. So things really have changed in the last 15 years. I remember 15 years ago, we had environmental groups. Again, I remember CURE showing up at administrative law judge hearings saying, this isn't the way. And so we had environmental groups advocating for a different path. We had amazing leaders like Senator Ellen Anderson saying we could absolutely put more wind electricity on the grid. And then what happened, right, is the Next Generation Energy Act, which was bipartisan, right? Republican Governor Tim Pawlenty, Democratic legislature passed this big bill, and we met that goal 8 years early. And so it has paid to be ambitious in Minnesota. I would also mention kind of in the making distinctions about geothermal and ground source heat exchangers and the like. One of the projects our German intern is working on right now is thinking about how air source heat pumps could play a role in a rural Minnesota community. And so, I don't. Do any of you have like a mini split in your house? So this is a question, and so I had forgotten this. My parents and I drove around Babbitt today and reminisced, and I had forgotten that everybody's got a fuel oil or LP, propane tank. I'd forgotten that the natural gas line didn't run there. The natural gas lines also generally don't run to native communities. And so some of the best opportunities to do air source heat financially exists in communities that don't have a natural gas line. Yes. Oh, sorry. You had a
Vermillion Junior College is the only junior college system in the state of Minnesota that does not have natural gas.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Biomass.
Yeah. So Vermillion does not have natural gas.
They run on biomass.
They're on biomass.
Yeah, I think mostly,
Interesting.
right? Biomass?
Mostly
Wood?
biomass at Vermillion.
I don't believe that
Okay.
plant's up and running.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right. Yes.
We know that Morris is exceptional in every way, but there are
That's a lot of pressure.
There are a lot of other small towns
Yes.
in Minnesota. Who's number 2? Who's number 3? Are any of the others making good progress?
Yeah. No, I appreciate. Thank you for the kind words about the Morris community. What I would say is that I think the sustainability puzzle, the sustainability conundrum, the sustainability game is really contextual and regional. And so I think that before 2005, Morris was windy and there were no wind turbines. And it was sunny and there were no solar panels. And the goal was to join the resources with the tech. And I would digress just for a second that because I think in my community, talking about the costliness of things, like that's a bit spendy, is like a way to kind of carry some cachet in a conversation, like, well, that's spendy. And I think it's important to realize, like, VCRs were expensive, and then they weren't. And DVD players were expensive, and then they weren't. And calculators were expensive, and then they weren't. And mobile phones were expensive, and then they weren't. And then they became like internet, and then your camera, and then they weren't. And wind was expensive, and then it wasn't. And then solar was expensive, and then it wasn't. And did you know energy storage is expensive? And it's boring to me, because it's just not going to be expensive in 5 minutes. The question is, like, will we do the process that we know works to bring us through a cycle of innovation and adoption? And who's pushing that? We need early adopters. I'm probably not the right early adopter, but I have friends who are. I wish I was. But I've got friends who, I really admire my vice chancellor, finance and facilities at Morris, Brian Herman. He's early adopting all kinds of stuff, and they're doing all kinds of stuff. And we need those role models. But in terms of your question about like who's doing cool things, I think that regionally across the state, I see models that I admire, and so I will not name it. In the far back there.
Yes. Can you talk more about how you sold the food composting idea? What was the main benefit that people saw in that? And what are the end products of it, and how is that?
Thank you. Yeah, so a question about the composting program at Morris. This was a great example where the students said to our administration, they said, it seems like you're doing a lot of cool stuff on clean energy, but like our zero waste game doesn't seem very good. So it was a little bit like, oh man, okay, you're right. That's true. We could be doing more. And that precipitated that trip down to compost school where they learned how to do it. But of course we did some with all these things, we do some financial analysis. We basically calculated if we diverted this, we knew how much it cost to haul our waste. There was, there's tonnage fees, there's a better name for it, tipping fees that we pay to our garbage hauler. We knew that if we could divert this much this much organics from the landfill, we wouldn't pay these fees. We could use that as fertilizer on campus. So we built a budgetary model too. And so part of that was trying to say there's environmental benefits. So, that's what I wanted to say with regard to your comment, sir, which was you were also bringing up in my mind this questions about the social cost of carbon and the cost of carbon and how do we price that in. And obviously we've got groups like Citizen Climate Lobby that have been yelling at the top of their lungs for years, like that we should be thinking about such things and whether we do or don't. But part of that was still making the case that this was good for the bottom line and then the triple bottom line, right? Did that kind of get at a little bit of, so and then in your question in the back. So that was, it made sense. It made sense across a number of regimes, but it still required, again, everything is hard. All this was still a big pain in the butt. So this is where we've got amazing leaders. Our facilities director, Lisa Harris, total rock star. So she got R2D2 composting units that go all around campus. So no matter where you are on the Morris campus, you can put your apple core in a composting container. But and then they had to train the custodial staff to do that and train them. And then we had to train the community to do that. And this is one of those things where, so when I go to the Common Cup in town, they've got these signs that literally say, compost here, aluminum cans here. And it's always messed up. And so again, we've got people who wear shirts, they're called trash talkers. And so we had 100 kids the other day at the Morris campus, and we were like, everything's compostable here except these two things. And I stood at the organics containers where I stood, and I was like, yep, no, yep, no, yep, no. And so I did trash talking, and we've got to do some of that. And so one adage like, you know, many of us like live our lives through like little sayings and adages. And the one I really appreciate is the first act of love is attention. And so like we teach our kids to love things, right? To love the boundary waters, to love what we see. And so I think teaching our kids to pay attention. Now, by the way, we tried to run the composting program at the elementary school and the high school. Do you know where it didn't work at the beginning? Yeah, of course. Yeah, it didn't. So little kids were like, I get it. Like, that's where my compost goes. So, I don't know. I don't know what it all means.
So what was the end product?
Final products?
Oh, so the composting material on campus was used on campus as a soil amendment. And now the material, all the material that goes to the Pope Douglas composting, I'm not sure what they'll finally do as they generate big amounts. My bet is they'll sell it. I don't know the final answer to what Pope Douglas is going to do. They've just kind of at the beginning of the beginning.
What would you think would happen if the state were to mandate that any new building going up had to have solar on it?
I mean, I think that we've got better tools. The question is about, what about a state mandate to say that we're going to put solar on our rooftops? And it's never, the next decade, we've never had more money, more tools, like more stuff to tell us whether or not solar could work in our communities. And so I think that if there are groups that think that this is a good idea, I mean, I think that would be something worth, thinking about advocating for. For the Morris campus, we view it as something that makes sense. And the city of Morris viewed it as something that made sense. And the school district viewed it as something that makes sense. There are other layers to the conversation that are more complicated about, we have law in the state that allows us to essentially put stuff on the roof under 40 kW, right? Our net metering laws. But there's also questions about what would it look like if we could put, for example, solar on top of the whole school. So which we did some studies. One of our German interns a couple years ago looked at, like, what would it look like if we put solar? We've got a vast school complex in Morris. What would it look like if we covered it with but the incentives and the ability to get on the grid and grid congestion and paying to get on the grid and doing an interconnection study, like where it gets really interesting is in the boring stuff, right? And that's why I'm thankful that there are nonprofits and others. We've got wonderful nonprofits in our state, right? Thinking whether it's Fresh Energy or Great Plains or Cure, getting in the nitty gritty about the policy. But last thing I'd say to your prompt is Minnesota's sunny and we're windy. And so Minnesota has no coal. Minnesota has no oil. Minnesota has no natural gas. So this is the weird part, is everything we spend goes out. And then even more wonk is, we're pulling oil out of rock and dirt. We're boiling, getting oil out of rock in the Dakotas and in the tar sands up in Canada in their boreal forest. The question about energy return on investment, Eroy, is important because when we get to the point where it takes a barrel of oil of energy to get a barrel of oil of energy out of the ground, that isn't as you can guess, that is not the time to think, should we build a renewable future? That's the end of society as we have experienced it. We're talking about Cormac McCarthy, The Road, right? Which is a great book. But anyway, so, yes.
Have you gotten any pushback from the big utility companies who are losing the business?
Yeah, so I really like that question as a complement to the gentleman's question about, so are we receiving pushback from the utility about all of this? So one of the things that we've been trying to do in Morris is to build a relationship with our utility. So going back to the LED lighting on Main Street, right? So we did it on campus. the city did it, and then but we were talking with the utility the whole time. Putting electric chargers. We put electric chargers in the community, the utility did it. And so part of it is to, maybe this is a moment to make a macro point, which is we are all responding to incentives. And so we can change incentives. So some people, I think some of my rural friends would say, here's what we hear from our big city friends. Don't grow corn, don't grow corn, don't grow soybeans, don't grow sugar beets, don't have ethanol plants, don't do this, don't do that. What do you want us to do for our livelihoods? Sound familiar? Right. So this is hard. Like, I don't have an answer to this, but I think that this is part of the challenge we've got to address together. Can you state the last part of the question again?
It was just about if you get pushback from
Yeah.
utility companies who are losing business.
Yeah. So the other thing is their incentives are different, and so this is also the dance, and it's okay. Like, so I think sustainability is about just like Aikido. We're trying to harmonize some tensions. We're not all going to agree. We don't all have to agree, and there's going to be some stuff left on the table. But I think there is a business model that farmers operate under. There's a business model that utilities operate under. Their basic business model, as I understand it, is you build equipment. You build, my utility was going to build a $1.6 billion coal-fired power plant just across the border. And they would have gotten cost recovery on that. And that's how they would have made money. And so, but now we're in a moment of great transition, of great urgency, of disruption. So what is the right model for that? I don't, so this is the question we need. This goes back to your question about the solar and should we mandate, we may, this is above my pay grade. But we may need we need more conversation with the utilities and others about their incentives and what happens if the incentives change. I mean, again, I don't really know anything, so this is it's always dangerous. But take the charging. So, who's got the best electric vehicle charging infrastructure in the United States?
Tesla.
Yeah, right. Elon Musk. So I think this is a profound question, right? So a billionaire, one billionaire person, built out a charging network. But we think that electric charging is a backbone for driving down, number one, right, greenhouse gas emissions of transportation. We think that, and we know that rural communities can be left out of it, this transition, which is going to save families money and all kinds of stuff. So the U.S. built the highway system as an act of economic development. We know the rural electrification history, right, of rural communities saying, may we please have electricity now, right? And so I think this question about, if you see where I'm going, which is, I just think it's very interesting that so who will own this future? So utilities are in the business of selling power. So is this something important to them and there's a sense of urgency? Or is there some other player? So this will all be settled. Will it be gas stations? Will it be the state of Minnesota saying this is public infrastructure for the public good? Of course we're going to have charging stations. Will it be our regulated utilities doing this? I mean, but we need an answer now, right? And so, but I love that we have a backbone answer, which is one billionaire did it.
Well, I think as we wind up, I want to remind you, since you're now all wound up and enthusiastic and excited about this stuff, that we have more meetings coming up.
Yay!
I think we have one next week. Adam, do you want to say a moment about that?
Sure.
Adam, could you come to the front? Would that be okay? Sorry. No, sorry.
Okay. Hi, madam. I'm a city councilor here at here in Ely, and each month I host a open forum, public forum, giving people the opportunity to express their viewpoints, concerns, things of that nature. People can submit topics and things of that nature. For May 29th, so just around the corner here, we've actually taken the sustainability topic and put it on the agenda. So we will be discussing this further and getting input not only from folks here that wish to attend, but other people in the community that regularly attend. So I would encourage you to come on out for that event. It's May 29th, 6 p.m. right here at the Folk School. That's what's happening on the 29th. I'm not sure what else needed to be mentioned, but that's where we'll be.
Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, you're welcome.
In addition, I'd like to point out that Ely Climate Group has a YouTube page. If you just get to YouTube and search for Ely Climate Group, you'll find us. And this talk will be posted together with other talks so that you can keep your enthusiasm level high. And that next month, the Ely Climate Group, I think, will pick up this topic again and try to think through what we should be doing as the next step. And so let me wind up by saying, gee, thanks, Troy, that was great.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the invitation.